Welcome to One of a Kind podcast. Slay that stage, your backstage pass to the minds of world champions of public speaking.
Discover the stories, the strategies, and the skills of world-class speakers and get ready to transcend your fear of public speaking and slay every stage life presents to you.
Hello, and welcome back to your very own podcast, Slay That Stage, with your host, Ayesha Hussain. As promised, our guest today is yet another world champion. But did you know, growing up, he suffered severe stuttering? But that didn't stop him from speaking. He kept going. He's a prime example of how anything is possible if you're willing to put in the work. He's 5 times TEDx speaker with more than 10,000 speaking engagements in 40 countries. He's also a certified coach and trainer who has presented several workshops on topics such as coping with change, leadership in crisis, building team, and work burnouts. Without further ado, I will welcome world champion of public speaking 2015, Mohammed Qahtani. Thank you, Mohammed, for joining our show. Before I go on to any question, while I was introducing you, I have this burning question from a person who suffered severe stuttering. How and where did you decide to become a public speaker?
First of all, thank you so much, Aisha, for having me on this podcast. And I think the reason why I wanted to become a public speaker is because I was ridiculed as a child. I was laughed at. I was bullied for not being able to speak. And I think that was one of the drives that made me think, like, I want to be like better than everybody else when it comes to like speaking. And I think what drove into me the passion of learning how to be on stage and learning how to speak and how to engage with the audience. And it was kind of me trying to prove a point that anybody could do it too.
I'm sure a lot of people have faced bullying or ridiculed in one way or the other. And I know we are deviating from public speaking, but this is a very important cause, especially children nowadays face a lot of that. What piece of advice you would give to the children who are facing that right now?
Well, the biggest mistake I made as a child is I've always looked at stuttering or stammering as if it was something wrong with me, as a flaw, as something that should be hidden and not talked about.
Mhm.
And I was so ashamed of myself my entire childhood that I tried as much as possible to avoid talking to people. I was always in the back of the class. I always kept my mouth shut because I truly believed something was wrong with me because I had this stuttering problem. And if I had a time machine and I could go back, and this is an advice for everybody who deals with stuttering on a daily basis, the biggest step to overcoming it is not to look at it as something wrong with you or as a flaw. Just look at it as something that, make you special, make you distinguished. I always say there are some people who are way too tall. There are some people who are short. There are some people who can't see very well, so they're wearing sunglasses. Does that make them less people? Of course not. It just makes them distinguished.
Mhm.
So always look at it as not something that's wrong with you, rather than as something that makes you unique and distinguish you. And I promise you that will be the first, like once you accept it, that will be the very first step for you to overcome it.
That's a beautiful note to say that accept yourself and then it turns out into something beautiful. Pretty much like caterpillar turns into butterfly.
Yeah.
um, I heard your speech, your winning speech. you talk about how words are so empowering and how words impact and or decide the trajectory of somebody's life. What was your thought process when you decided that speech?
Well, the use of power is something that I truly believed on, and I've always believed that everything that is right or wrong with this world is only there because either the right person said something or the wrong person said something. And what better way to do it than being on stage? Every time you speak, hundreds and even thousands of people would listen to you. And you might think to yourself, "Well, I'm just a nobody. Like, I know myself, I'm not really that special. I have my flaws. We all do. But remember, every time you speak, somebody out there will be listening. And you might say the one thing that they've been waiting to hear all this time. And that's why this message was really crucial to me and drove me to write the speeches, because I truly believe that we can change this entire world if we said the right thing at the right time.
Oh, I mean, as you say, pen's mightier than the sword, right?
Yeah.
Um, but when you were preparing, and I am one of the contestants myself, I am at a district contest right now. How many versions did you write till you reached the final? Because I've spoken to a couple of other champions and they've given like various versions. Just curious, how many versions did you have?
Well, like one of the things that I cannot do well, I'm not really good at writing speeches. Like my writing is really like horrible. And this is the importance of having coaches and mentors, because we all have our strength and we all have our flaws.
Right.
And I realized my flaw is I'm not really good with words. My strength is I'm really good with humor. So I mean, I can make people laugh easily, but I'm not a really good writer. So when I started scripting the script or writing the script, I looked at people in my club or in my area or the district even, and I looked at the speakers that I always admired in terms of usage of words, and I asked them to be my coaches. I said, okay, this is my script. How can you make it look better? What phrases would you change? What phrase would you add? And this will apply to all the speakers out there. There is something that you really do really well. That's your strength. Maybe your strength is your voice, or maybe your movement on stage, or maybe humor, or maybe how you write the word, or how you structure a speech. But maybe you have another weakness somewhere else. Find a coach that could improve that weakness. My speech went through like I think 3 or 4 months of revisions and rewriting until it got to the point where you see it online.
So when you say find a coach, how many coaches did you have, or was there any particular one that impacted your speech the most?
I, I had like more than 20 coaches. I had people from the division level to the district level. I've had people who chipped in and change and made a lot of like changes. And here's another struggle that you might go through as a speaker is you're gonna receive a ton of feedback.
Mhm.
Everybody will have his or her point of view. And you can't really accommodate all of them, because you notice some of these feedbacks, they would contradict each other.
Yes.
But what I did is when I was like seeking people's for feedback and coaching, whatever, I see what the common opinion is.
Mhm.
If a lot of people said this part is too boring or could be changed, that means, yeah, okay. If it's just one person, then maybe it's just a one person's like opinion. But if a lot of people wanted this part to be changed or wanted this phrase to be changed, then I would go with them. And this is the other advice I would give anybody who's speaking. I'm like, you don't have to take everybody's feedback. You don't have to take any kind of suggestions or comments that you get, because again, when I give you comments in your speech, this is me saying, if I would do it myself, I would do it this way.
Right.
But again, it's still your speech, it's still your message. Don't change it too much to the point where it becomes something that's not you, which is you're not comfortable with. But notice what the majority will agree on. If they said the opening is too weak, then maybe it should be revisited. If the conclusion was too weak, then maybe it should be revisited. But you cannot just change every part of the speech based on just one single opinion. I mean, like one single person's opinion.
So, if my understanding correct, you're saying go with what majority says,
Yeah.
but when you are changing the speech based on what majority is saying, even then, do you agree that somewhere the authenticity of the story gets impacted?
Again, at the end of the day, it's still your speech and it's still your story. My point is sometimes we don't know what the audience feel.
Mhm.
And sometimes some phrases or some parts of the speech they might sound okay to us.
Mhm.
We get it, but maybe the audience don't. And I do remember when I wrote the Power of Word speech, and there was a phrase before the conclusion, which I was really, really proud of because it was like I wrote it in a very specific way, and it was very like it rhymes and stuff like that. And but every time I rehearsed it, people said, "Yeah, we don't get it."
Okay.
And I kept rehearsing it with a different audience, and the same reaction again. I don't know what you meant with that line. So it made sense to me, but it has to make sense to the audience too. And I had to take the line, even though I loved it myself. I had to actually take it out of the speech because I felt like a lot of audience would not get it.
Yeah, that obviously makes sense because we're here to connect with the audience.
Yeah.
Going back to your world champion speech, you started off with a cigarette in your hand and trying to prove that how cigarette is actually good for your health. That was a very unique way, just as in if you've seen Darren Aykroyd, he starts it with falling flat on his face on the ground.
Yeah.
How important, and I'm talking about not just in contest side, but delivering a keynote or speaking elsewhere or doing any presentation. How important are the theatricals or the dramaticals that you add to it? How important is that?
Uh, I'm one of the rare few who says that you shouldn't be too theatrical on stage. My rule of thumb is when you speak on stage and you step down, and if I walk up to you and start to speak to you, if you become a different person, your mannerism changed, your voice changed, that means whatever you did up there was fake.
Okay.
I always say be the same person on stage and off stage. However, some parts of your speech needs to come to life, especially when you're telling a story. And you should bring it up to life by being or acting part of your speech so people could actually see that happening in front of them. For example, if I'm gonna have a dialogue between two people, and I kept saying, so I said so and so, and then he said so and so, and then I said so and so. This is me just reciting a speech, and people don't actually see it. I could do it in a different way where I became the two people by changing my voice and changing my place on the stage so people can actually see the story happening in front of you. I mean, like in front of them. I always say, don't tell me a story, show me the story. However, you should be authentic, meaning you should be the same person on stage and off stage too.
Okay, that is something I've heard even from Craig Valentine. Bring your characters to life instead of
Yeah.
narrating it. So, and I've noticed that even when I changed my style of doing that instead of he said and I said, and actually doing a dialogue, I've gotten better response. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I also know that you coach. So when you're coaching, and again, everybody is not a right fit for, so how do you decide that this coachee is the right fit for me?
I would say it's the other way around. The coachee should be the one who decides whether this coach is the right fit for me. Uh, if you need a speaking coach, ask yourself first what is your weakness, as we said earlier. What is the one thing that you struggle with, and then you can seek the coach based on that. For example, if you're gonna seek me to coach you on writing a speech, I'll be a terrible, terrible option because, as I said earlier, I'm not really good with writing or like with words.
Right.
I'm good when it comes to humor and using your facial expression. So if you have a speech and you think I could make it humorous, but I don't know how, then maybe you can seek me as a coach. So I think it's the other way around. You as a coach, you should find out what is your speech missing or what is the one thing that you're struggling with, and then seek a coach that you know can do it much better. There are people who are really good when it comes to your voice. There are people who are really good when it comes to the structure of the speech. There are people who really use really specific and colorful language that bring the speech back to life. So ask yourself, what do I want to improve in my speech, and seek a coach accordingly.
You just said your strength is humor and facial expression. Um, can you share a few tips with our audience? Say one, two, or three tips that our audience can take back and say, okay, I can use this to add humor in my speech.
Well, if you want to add a humor to, for example, an international speech, one thing that you should really care about is you don't force the humor in. Meaning, I've seen some people who will deviate from the main structure or from the main flow of the story. They will deviate just to tell a joke because they think I need to include humor in my speech. And when you do it that way, like it sounds like it's forced. It sounds like you went out of your way just to actually tell a joke. There are few ways that you can write jokes really easily. First is the exaggeration, where you take like anything in the speech and you want to like describe it, and then you exaggerate the like description. There is one where you make fun of yourself. There's one where it's called the rule of three, where you mention two things that are normal and then the third one that's abnormal. Usually that will get a laugh too. So there are a bunch of ways that you can actually inject humor in your speech. You could actually find it by just Googling it, by the way. However, as I said, most importantly is don't like the joke has to fit with the speech, not the other way around. You shouldn't deviate the speech just so you can include a joke in it. So take your script and and find out where in the script where you can add a little bit of a joke, a little bit of a humor, but you don't change the entire flow of the speech just so you can accommodate humor in it.
So say somebody who's not a funny person, how important it is to add humor or uncover humor in your speech.
Well, if it's a Toastmaster speech, which is something that I really kind of hate too, I hate the fact that right now people only pay attention if you're being funny. And I've seen some excellent, excellent speakers with excellent speeches and excellent messages who simply are being forgotten just because they didn't have humor in their speech. However, there's also the other extreme where people try so hard just to make people laugh that they ended up being a clown. They have a beautiful message, but nobody would pay attention to it because you were funny the entire time. Uh, Again, if humor is not your thing, I would say seek a coach or a mentor who's really good with humor and add maximum 5 humorous lines in your speech, no more. And most of your humor should be at the beginning of the speech. Leave the rest of the speech or the end of the speech to be more profound and more toward the message itself, where in some instances people should not actually laugh. So make them laugh at the beginning and then engage them with the story at the end.
That makes sense. You also said your strength is facial expressions.
Yeah.
Any tips on that?
I always say just live your speech. I mean, just simply just live it. Meaning, if you're telling a story, just picture yourself being there in the story and use your facial expressions. Show that you're mad or you're happy, or show that something is sad or something is scary. So you can actually play with your facial expression based on the story itself. Don't tell me a story, show me a story. This is my rule of thumb every time I speak, is if I'm going to use a story in my speech, bring the story to life. Let the audience watch it happening, unfolding in front of them.
That's a beautiful way to say it. I think I early on started practicing in front of a mirror where I would make expressions. I'm not so good at it, but I'm still trying. So my take is I go in front of the mirror. Well, now with technology, I record myself and go back and check it, and that helps a lot. But I want to ask you, when you think you're funny, have you ever experienced where you expressed a joke and in the flow, but the audience didn't react? And if you did, second part, how did you recover?
It happens all the time. Sometimes what's funny to you might not be funny to a certain group of people. And I've learned that the best way to tackle it is always put in your mind that not every joke that you tell is gonna work. So you're walking on stage with the assumption that some of my jokes will actually fail and will not actually get any laughs. And you just proceed to the next line. There's nothing worse than when you tell a joke and nobody laughs and you just looking around, just waiting for the laugh to come. If it didn't come, just move on to the next line. I always have this rule where 50% of your jokes, like half of your jokes, are not gonna work. You think it's funny to you, but
Mhm.
they're not gonna work. And walk on stage with that assumption in mind that half of my jokes are not going to work, but I'm gonna keep the flow exactly how I practiced.
Okay, that's a good note to have that mindset that even if somebody doesn't laugh, you move on.
Yeah.
On that note, I'm going to ask you another issue where have you ever been on a stage and forgotten what you're going to say next?
Well, I always say one of the biggest mistakes that you can do as a speaker is like memorize your speech word for word. This is like the biggest mistake you can do as a speaker for two reasons. First of all, if you forget one word, everything after it is gone.
Yeah.
Second of all, your tone when you're speaking, it would sound like a person who's reciting something rather than actually speaking. And your audience can tell that this is just like a script that you just memorized and just said it exactly exactly the way it is. So my rule is you write down your speech, write it down, but read it 4, 5, 6, 10 times, then put it aside and start speaking. That way, even if you forget the words, you will still, you can know what your structure is. You know what your first point is, what your second point is, you know how to introduce, how to conclude, and at any moment in your speech, you know exactly where you are.
All right.
So even if you forget your flow, just jump into the next point that you remember and carry on. The audience are not gonna know. Nobody knows the content of your speech except you. You're the only one who knows the content of your speech. But stay away from like memorizing a speech. This is a big mistake that everybody should avoid.
So if I'm hearing it correct, and something I've heard even from Craig Valentine is do not memorize it, internalize it.
Absolutely. Don't you ever memorize a speech. Write it down. However, you have to write it down. Don't I've seen people who say, I'm gonna write some points, some, like outline, and then I'll just make it up on stage. When you do that, your audience can feel or can sense that you're making it up on stage. And when they feel that, the first thought that will come to their mind is if this person did not prepare something for me, then he's not worth my time to listen to. So I always say write a script, an entire script, read it 5, 6, 10 times, and put it aside. Then stand up and speak. You're not going to say the exact same words that you wrote, but the structure will be exactly the same.
That makes sense. And I completely agree with you where audience are giving us the time as gift. It's a valuable gift that they are offering us. And the
Yeah,
least we can do is to prepare
absolutely.
and honor that gift. So I totally agree with you. Since it's a contest season and everybody's busy either at district level or division, and they're all, if my question to you would be, have you ever went for the contest and not placed, and what was your reaction? How did you deal with that?
Well, I used to be a sore loser.
Okay.
I don't like losing. And I remember the first time I did the contest in 2010, in 2010, and I placed, I think, second place on the area contest, and it bugged me. Like I was completely bothered because I had prepared or a speech, and and then at the end I just lose at the area level, like not even at the division, like the area level. I remember my club president at the time. He came to me and he was congratulating me on the speech. But I said, "Yeah, but man, like I got second place. Like, who cares, you know?" And then he said, "If you're only in this contest to win a trophy, to win a piece of glass, I'll go now and I'll buy you one. If that's what you're after, I'll buy you the biggest trophy in the market." And that was a wake-up call for me because a lot of people will do this competition and they will eventually lose. But keep in mind, Toastmasters gives you a platform where on every level of the contest, you speak to more and more people. More
Yes.
and more people will get to listen to your message.
Yes.
Is it worth it? Is the message that you're selling, is it worth it? I always tell people that I coach, don't you ever, ever write a speech just to please the judges. Because I've seen a lot of people who just script a speech just specifically to tick boxes for the judges. Yes, the grammar, the message, a lot of. Ask yourself, did the audience get something out of it or not?
I that what you just said so resonates with me is because last year was my first year international speech contest, and from what I could see was my speech was perfectly crafted, and as you said, every tick box, and I was going for the trophy. And I didn't place. I didn't place at the district level, and for first I think few like a minute or so, it was like I'm done with this. I'm never doing this again. I've put in so much hard work, and it's all down the drain. But I think after that, an audience, somebody came and hugged me and said that you it was a beautiful message. Don't give up, and you're a wonderful speaker. And somehow, I don't know what it did, but it like snapped me out, and I said, okay, I'm going to come back. And this year, I'm not sure if my speech is perfectly well crafted or perfect or not, but I know the message has value because when I delivered that at the division level, I had people from the audience and say that my message touched them. And now, when I'm going to district, my only goal is I'm going to be giving this message to a larger audience. Trophy or no trophy, I feel
Absolutely.
elevated already.
Let me tell you something. As a person who made it all the way to the championship and won, let me tell you what it looks like from the other side. Let me look like I mean like what it looks like being a world champion. It's not really that glamorous. I mean, the first year, yeah, maybe a lot of people still know you because they saw you on YouTube, but then after that, nobody would remember who you are anymore. Is there money in it? Of course, there is no money in it. I've seen speakers who get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars and they're not even in the Toastmasters. So if you're not in it for the fame and you're not in it for the money, then why are you in it? By the way, there is always a world champion every year, so you're not really that special, even if you win. I promise you the best feeling that you can get, the most rewarding feeling that you can get, is when someone comes to you years from now and say, I listened to you speak at this place or at that place, and you changed me. And often when they say that to you, you don't even remember that speech. As a speaker, you already forgot. But if you could have, like, if you have touched someone's life years ago and they made better choices in their lives and now they are being a better human being just because of something that you said, that's better than all the fame and all the money that you can get.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Especially what after because I was COVID time speaker, so I've only done Zoom speaking. So
Yeah,
I had not really experienced the live audience, and I experienced at Division 11 for the first time. And I remember going back to my mentor, Greg Valentine, and I said, this is how speakers feel? And if that's the thing, then I want to do this for life, because just touching lives felt just so
yeah,
surreal. And
absolutely.
my message has always been more about I want to work on mental health awareness and do something in that field and help even one life that would, it feels like then I've filled my purpose on earth. But going back to purpose, and as you said, speakers make a lot of money, some do, and just because you're world champion doesn't mean you start getting paid. How important is having that purpose as a speaker?
That's actually what's gonna drive you forward. Um, People are only gonna know you, or gonna follow you, or gonna listen to you if they feel that you are sincere, that you mean what you say. I always give this example when I say, if you, a lot of you have heard of Tony Robbins, for example. Tony, and he's a very successful motivational speaker, and he has a very unique style when speaking. But if you go to YouTube and you search Tony Robbins, you will find some of his old clips and some of the new ones. And if you watch the old ones and the new ones, I am 100% sure the old ones will touch you a lot more. And the reason is because at the beginning, he was just, he's entering the field. He doesn't have any money yet. But he still spoke with passion.
Right.
He really meant what he said. He had made some mistakes and he was speaking and telling people, don't make the same mistake that I did. He was genuine when he spoke. But then he started to get famous and money started to roll around. And now when you listen to him, even though he's still a very good speaker, you cannot help but think, is he really genuine, or he just doesn't, or does he want to just get paid? I always say, whether you speak to 20 people or speak to 10,000, always have the same energy on stage. Always take the stage with the thought of, I really hope that I can change one person's life. Just one. And that one person can change another, and then the other person will change another, and so on. And you're starting a ripple effect. Now, money and fame and all that stuff, that can come back later. But first, be really hopeful that you could change one person's life in the audience.
So, if you were to tell the new aspiring speakers, doesn't matter they're 20, 30s, or 40s, because people decide at any age, um, if you were to give them three pieces of advice and say that, hey, you know what, this is what's going to get you more audience. Because if you have a wonderful message, what's the point of giving it to just one? And as you said, yes, touching one life is just equally important. But if the message is so valuable and you want to deliver it more and more audience, what's the three advice you would give them?
First one is, be as engaging as possible. Use humor or storytelling techniques to keep your audience engaged. Second of all, choose a message that could be like universal, meaning anybody around the globe could relate to it. Some people, they choose only a message that only a certain, cultures can know, or like it only fits in a. Yes, that people could listen to it, but then you lost everybody else in the world. And lastly, and I cannot stress this enough, be genuine about the speech and be genuine about the message that you want to give. Just give it from the heart. As a world champion, I am blessed and privileged to be invited to a lot of districts all over the world. I've already spoken in 25 like districts all over the world, and in every district contest that I go to as a keynote speaker, I always make sure that I attend the international speech contest. And in every international speech contest, in every district I've been to, the same thing happens all the time, which is this. There will always be a speaker who does everything per the book. Structure, check. Body language, check. Use of stage, check. Tone of voice, check. He checks all the boxes. But you're looking at him thinking, I don't know. Something doesn't feel right. Like I don't, something is missing. And then after that speaker will come another speaker with a broken English, broken grammar, broken pronunciation. He doesn't move much on stage, but he's speaking from here, and you can tell that he means what he says. And in every contest I've been to, the second guy always wins.
Interesting. So speak from your heart, and genuine
Absolutely.
is more important than the checkbox.
Yes.
And I think that is not just contest limited. I think that is universal. Doesn't matter where you're speaking, because audience are very smart, and anybody who thinks otherwise is somebody shouldn't be on the stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've given our new aspiring 3 topics to be how to go up. Anything you would tell them to avoid?
I would say avoid being too theatrical on stage, because when you act too much and you do a lot of things, people can tell that this is not you.
Right.
This is not, and it's not like authentic. And even though you might have a really good speech and a really good message, but I always had the feeling that this message is fake just because you try to oversell it or overdo it in a way. Another thing that you should, well, not avoid, but actually do is always try to come early to the place where you're going to speak, because you get you will have a gauge of the audience. You see who the audience are, and you will get a taste of it, and it will actually help you to kind of tailor your speech a little bit to fit the audience that you're speaking to. Last thing, and this is specific for the Toastmasters out there, is I've seen some speakers who, in the speech contest, they would go outside. They said, I'm not going to watch any of the other speeches because I don't want it to influence me. I'm only going to go on stage when it's my turn, and then I'm going to go back. That means that you only care about yourself. Sit there and watch the other speakers. You don't have to copy them or imitate them or be intimidated by them, but it's also a chance for you to get inspired by other people's performances.
True. I just would like to add to that is that when you're missing out somebody's speech, it might have a very beautiful message that you've missed out on a message.
Absolutely, yes.
And I've personally learned a lot from other people's speeches, especially, trying to compete. I've watched a lot of not just world champions, but I've actually visited other contests just to see, because if they're sharing it on the stage, it's valuable to them. There must be a reason why they're bringing it live, and you never know what you might get from there.
Absolutely.
So I love attending speeches and conferences. You get to see so much and learn so much from, because I believe everybody has some strength or something to offer that I lack, and I can give. It's vice versa, and I think that is a beautiful exchange, and you build beautiful friendships. So yes, I totally agree with you where you should listen to everybody else's speech, and you never know what you might pick from them.
Yeah.
I wanted to also ask you, especially this being a contest season or otherwise, I know like leaders look for coaches to improve their presentation, or when they're talking to their company wide or elsewhere, or sales team improve their sales. How important is to get a coach before you do a presentation? And on that note, I'd also like to ask you, when you did your TEDx, did you have any coaches?
So, as I said earlier, if you feel like you need help, and again, everybody has his strengths and weaknesses. If you really feel like you are weak in one point or one aspect of speaking, that's when you should actually just get a coach. Now, when it comes to my I'm like speaking outside of like Toastmaster into like TEDx, whatever. Keep in mind, up until I won the World Championship in 2015, I've never spoken for more than 5 minutes.
Right.
Like all of my speeches were just club speeches and contest speeches, and that's it. But then when people invite you to speak, they don't want you to just speak for 5 minutes. Now
Right.
they want 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and 1 hour keynotes. Something that I've never like done before. And for me as a speaker, that's actually the biggest growth that I've had as a speaker is actually happened after I won. I had to learn how to, I mean, because you can keep an audience engaged for 5 minutes. It's extremely hard to keep them engaged for an hour.
Yes.
So how can you be that kind of speaker? You know, the speaker who is not boring, the speaker that people wants to listen to for a very long, prolonged time. I had to learn the techniques of what do you do when you feel like your audience are slipping away or they're starting to lose interest. How can you hook them back in? And that requires coaching too. So again, I see coaches where I feel like I have the weakness.
So you give fantastic advice for somebody who wants to compete or message. Having been on TEDx 5 times yourself, somebody who wants to go or inspires to be at TED Talks, what can you guide them in short period of time? Say that, hey, this is the right thing to do and this will get you on TED Talks.
Uh, well, when it comes to a TED Talk, you can actually apply. Like you can actually go to online and search for any like TED Talks near you and start applying. And usually what like TEDx are looking for, they're not really looking for someone who's a professional or like a professional speaker. They're looking for normal people to share their normal stories. So ask yourself, what can you share that is unique that's never been done before? You know, we've heard a lot of stories about people who were broken and crushed and then they made it and now they're successful. Yeah, inspiring, true, but I've heard it so many times
Yes.
to the point that, yeah, I've heard that before. Do you have anything else? So ask yourself, what can I bring that nobody had talked about it before? You need something unique, a unique message or a unique topic that nobody has like discussed before. That's what will get you on the TEDx stage. The second thing is you have to keep in mind that it's not like Toastmasters. In Toastmasters, you focus a lot on your, hand gestures and using the stage and moving left and right. In TEDx, you're not even allowed to move outside of a circle. They give you a red circle that you should only move like within it. So you're only moving one step ahead, or like I'm like one step forward, one step to the right. That's it. So all the stuff that you learned in Toastmasters in terms of utilizing the entire stage, you cannot just apply the same technique into like Toastmasters. Into like TEDx. But again, choose a topic that nobody has spoke about before. Be as unique as possible because that's what will get you on on a TEDx stage.
Oh, that's beautiful advice that every stage is unique and you have to prepare accordingly.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful, and I'm going to use that as a segue. We have a question for you from our prior guest. I will
Okay.
bring that to the stage for you.
The question I have for the next guest on the Play That Stage podcast is this. If you, knowing what you know now, how you have advanced as a speaker and some of the experiences you have now, if you could give one or two pieces of advice to a brand new speaker who is just stepping onto the stage, as it were, that would help them to grow as a speaker most efficiently and most effectively, what would those words of advice be?
Wow. A question from Jim Key, who's actually my favorite ever world champion. Like by far, he's like my favorite world champion ever. And if what advice I would give to someone who's starting the speaking career is this: 90% or 95% of the time, people would listen to you just because it's you. Meaning, you could have a very beautiful message and a really beautiful speech, but if nobody knows who you are, nobody's gonna listen. And one of the weaknesses that I wish, like, if I can go back in time and change, is focus a lot more on your exposure. I know that sounds shallow, but people would not listen to you unless they know who you are. And I've had clients who, when they invited me to speak, and they asked me, "How do you want to be introduced?" And I told them, "Well, just use a normal introduction, world champion of public speaking, 5 times TEDx speaker." And they were, "Oh, wait a minute, you're a world champion of public speaking?" And I said, "You didn't know that? So why are you inviting me?" And the answer is always, "Oh, we've seen one of your speeches on YouTube." So the only reason that I'm getting invited to speak is because they saw one of my other speeches, which means the more exposure you have, the more stage that you're gonna get. Every time I go speak, every time I go speak, I always make sure that the speech is recorded and it's put online. Why? Because this gives you a key to open the door so you can speak a little bit more. And the more you speak, the more people that you influence. As I said earlier, fame and money can come later, but you want to get as many chances to speak to as many people as possible. So invest a lot more on your social media presence. Anytime you speak, just post it on YouTube and Instagram and Snapchat. When people see you speak here and there and here and there, they start thinking, "Wow, this guy must be good. Maybe we should get him too." And that is your key, so you can speak to more and more people and influence more and more people's lives.
Yes, I totally agree that, and that is a beautiful takeaway. Influence more and more people. So, and plus, social media is free marketing. Well, I shouldn't say free, but
Exactly.
to a lot of extent, it's free unless you're hiring a lot of team people. If you have the time to post it by yourself, it's a free advertisement.
Yeah.
So the more people see you, the more invitations, and the more stage time, more influence. That is an awesome note to. And I mean, I can have this conversation on and on, but I know we are on a time crunch. So I would like to thank you from Slay That Stage and our audience for your time and your insight. Any final thoughts before we wrap the show?
Thank you so much for having me. And I would like to give a message to all the speakers out there. We can really change the world. We have a superpower, and our superpower is our words. If you know that you can make this world a better place, don't give that chance to the wrong person to grab a mic and say something.
That's a wonderful note. As speakers, let's make the world a better place. That's a thought
Absolutely.
to wrap on. Until next time, signing off, Ayesha Hussain.
Thank you.